But first, a Footy Classified exclusive. And tonight I can tell you that the AFL is working on a radical change to its fixture for the next 2 seasons that would see the grand final played in the second week of October and the return of State of Origin football to be launched in the 2026 season. The AFL is working under the theme of turning major events into mega events, setting up the major growth of the game over the next decade. So here's how it could look. March. The return of State of Origin. Over 2 weekends, Victoria, South Australia, Western Australia and the Indigenous All-Stars. And, in a separate division, Queensland, New South Wales, Tasmania and the Northern Territory. Winners play off in the All-Australian final and an international rules game between Australia and Ireland in the women's group. Absolutely sensational. Late March, early April, round 1. All Victorian clubs play each other in Victoria. The Queensland and Sydney teams play at home, while WA and South Australian teams would play each other, allowing their traditional 2 showdowns and derbies to continue during the season. So, games would be played in each state and extra blockbusters for everybody. The AFL would expect an opening round record attendance played in more appropriate climatic conditions than what we saw this year. Right. The later start would also avoid clashing with Grand Prix weekend and give players more time to prepare for the season, which has been a big complaint. There would be mini gather rounds for Queensland and New South Wales, which would be scheduled for later in the year rather than the opening round. So, for example, when Collingwood plays Brisbane on the Thursday before Easter, let's say Hawthorn could be drawn to play the Gold Coast. Both supporter groups could stay for the Easter break in Queensland, and then you flip the following weekend so they play each other. The same for Sydney and even for Perth. Now, a split round in June would also give the northern states an exclusive weekend of football and in the best weather. All up, more blockbusters for all clubs and a football tourism bonanza for fans. Now, the familiar blockbuster weekends, Gather Round, Easter, Anzac Day, Sir Doug Nicholls Round, King's Birthday Weekend, would provide a constant stream of top-class events for AFL. But the big change is at the business end of the season. A later start means a later finish, with a grand final in the second weekend of October. Now, before everyone loses their mind over this, there have been 28 October grand finals. Now, the later finals would allow the mega event NFL game for points at the MCG to be played without a clash, and the MCG would then be prepared for both codes in partnership between the NFL and the AFL. Now, the AFL has already struck a number of major deals with the American Giants, who will allow the AFL to use the millions of dollars of infrastructure the NFL will bring for the AFL finals for footy fans. It would also mean that the AFL's 3 biggest games, the preliminary finals and the grand final, would have clear air away from competing codes like the NRL, which would mean for massive ratings. So in an ever-growing race for the ratings and the corporate dollar, this would give the AFL a huge, huge win. In a potential further ratings boost, the AFL Grand Final would be played on the first weekend of daylight saving. With a sunset scheduled at 7:32 p.m, the opportunity for a night grand final becomes even more enticing and all that brings. So in 2027, this would also allow the MCG to be clear to host the 150th anniversary of Test cricket between Australia and England, expected to be another huge international event here in Melbourne. And you know what, everyone? Even Mike Brady is up for it.
'Cause there's one day in October, the footy's almost over. It could be forever. We're gonna have to band together, 'cause footy's such a part of this whole town. And October, it's got a funny sound. Sure has. Back to you, Eddie.
Good on you, Mike. It has got a funny sound, but I think it's got a really good ring to it. Now, I know everybody loses their mind about any changes, but you have to evolve. I mean, the whole idea is Darwin's theory of evolution is not the survival of the fittest, it's who evolves and who adapts survives. So with all these big events coming in, the AFL, rather than going up and butting heads, get behind those that power boat and water ski behind it and make the most of it. I think the AFL have got some really great ideas there, but that's my thoughts. Over to you guys. What do you reckon?
Well, there's a bit to unpack, mate, and we'll get to it in a second. But from a player's point of view and a club point of view, it sounds unbelievable. But talk to me about the chances of this seriously actually happening.
I know it's the AFL at the moment are deep diving into all the issues that could come up. Okay, so there's going to be, everyone will have an idea. I mean, the women's football season for a start, you need to make sure that that's okay as well. Where does that go to? But things are evolving in the AFL. The main thing on this is, as I said, Caroline Wilson had a story tonight on Channel 7 that the Sydney Swans were going to petition to get rid of the bye game before the finals. I can tell you that deal's done. That's been signed in. They have to do that because you've got to have time to bump in the NFL and bump out at the MCG. So this fits everybody. Everybody gets a win out of this. And more importantly, I mean, even the VRC have been talking. I spoke to Neil Wilson, their chairman, today, about turning the Turnbull Stakes the day after the grand final into the launch of the spring racing season and having a major event out there for all the people who are in town for the footy. But so everyone's a winner. I mean, cricket wins, racing wins.
Huge. In 1 year, you've got State of Origin, international rules, gather round, 500,000 people opening round, NFL in Melbourne, grand final in October. It's going to cause some issues, Ed, if you're backing that. 150-year anniversary of Test cricket all in 1 year. That is absolutely huge and a lot of change. How are people going to handle the change?
Well, there's not much. It's only 2 weeks, let's be honest about it. And as I said, there's been 28 grand finals in October.
Who's won most of those?
The Pies did well, actually.
Is this a Collingwood conspiracy to move the grand final in October?
If it means we can win the flag, we start it now. But
how much involvement have you had in this? It sounds like you're across this.
Look, I have to declare an interest. I'm on the board of Visit Victoria and I'm on the trust of the MCC. So I'm across things. But this is an AFL situation. The AFL have realised their partnership, and it is a genuine partnership with the National Football League of America, gives them unprecedented access. Clubs are going to be able to pony up with American clubs. They're doing deals with concussion protocols and research. They're doing all sorts of things like that and fixturing, etc., etc. So it's a really big play, and the AFL have positioned themselves beautifully to set it up. And what they've been able to do now is, I mean, they've always thought here about, you can't let the NRL start the season early and they've gone off to Vegas. My point is, if you open the season with a record-breaking opening round where everybody can go to the game, and then at the end of the year, you've got free air to have the grand final. I don't think you
I'll put my coach's hat on just quickly. I mean, if you look at the way the coaches, the players have to come back, they come back for 2 or 3 weeks in December, then they break. I think it's by pushing the season back, you actually get a really good run. Bring them back on players back on the 1st of January, train them for 12 weeks, get them ready for the season. They play State of Origin, they play rep footy, or they play practice games, and you really get a full run in, Rory.
What if you get injured in State of Origin?
Well, you get injured at training.
Yeah, I think you get injured anyway. I think as a coaching group, as a group of players and a group of coaches, we've got to be bigger than that now. I think the State of Origin,
but you know they're not though. You know the coaches, if a star player gets injured, will be filthy.
But they get injured in pre-season games.
But at least they have control over that.
What's your biggest story tonight when we get to it eventually at Essendon today?
The 2 injuries.
Two injuries in a bye week.
Yeah. At training. No, I get that. But you know coaches as well as I do.
I know coaches are protective, but I think it's got to the point now where you just go, 1st of January, everyone comes back, you get a 10-week run into the season, you play some State of Origin for your best players. As a player, I'd rather play in a State of Origin game than up the back of the country in a practice game.
Hey, Eddie, a bit happening at AFL House. Jeff Walsh. What's the latest there, and what sort of role is he going to have when and if he does get appointed or elevated?
I'll tell you, there'll be an announcement of this on Thursday, and Jeff Walsh. And I say congratulations to Laura Kane on this one because she's bringing him in as part of the team, and he's technically a consultant, but he's part of the team. He's going to be in there a fair bit, and he's going to be looking after the clubs, the competitions and major projects in football development and the football department. So getting someone like Jeff Walsh, who doesn't like the media, so he's not going to be out there doing media things. He's been around forever. He's got the full confidence of everybody.
He doesn't want Laura's job as the key.
Doesn't want Laura's job.
But this is Mr. Fix-It, isn't it? There's a fair amount of disharmony among clubs and inside the AFL towards the current administration. Jeff Walsh is there to ease the waters.
But as you just said before, I mean, clubs have got a knack of complaining about
I understand that. They whinge well. But this is broad and it's been there for a while.
Is this a Laura Kane appointment? Does she want this?
She's absolutely at the forefront of this. She's the head of football and she wouldn't be having Jeff Walsh there if she didn't want him.
But I think you had to get through the process there.
Right.
Because what will happen is the media goes, oh, right, OK, they're bringing in Jeff Walsh. They're bringing in,
No, that's my immediate reaction.
This old bloke over the top. But what they've got to do is, and I think Andrew Dillon's doing this now, he's had a year with his feet under the table. Now he can start putting his own team in place. And I think we've got to be grown up about this. and realise if there are things that need. If you've got people over here who really know what they're doing and you don't use them, then that's negligent.
Yep.
If you've got somebody there and you bring them in and you get a better result, that's called management.
Are the clubs happy with where things are at the moment?
I think they'll be happy on Thursday when Jeff gets appointed.
They're not happy at the moment. No.
Right.
But what I love is the AFL's been proactive with this appointment. And going back to the fixturing too, they've been proactive with that too. Rather than being reactive around what the NRL are doing with round 0 and gather round, we seem to be copying them a lot and being very reactive. This is proactive from the AFL.
Well, I agree with you. I think the AFL reacted to the media saying, the NRL get off to a start in the season. Let's get up with the money is up here. Get up with the grand final. We are now, don't forget, Foxtel's now owned by not Rupert Murdoch anymore, but an international DAZN. They don't know what AFL is. So we've got to actually put the runs on the board to get the money. So coming back to your point, Tom, if the AFL coaches, for example, want to have a lift in the soft cap, we've got to find some more money. Yeah. And guess where that comes
players won't
from? Coming up with ideas. The players get paid well playing State of Origin too.
And the seasons have moved. I mean, you look at the way the weather is. I mean, cricket, you can't play cricket in October anymore, can you? So will cricket be happy with that AFL basically takes over October?
Doesn't affect professional men's cricket,
no,
but it doesn't affect
cricket.
Yeah, I think April to October makes perfect sense for cricket. The question I have for you, Eddie, just last one on this, is there's a lot of stakeholders to please here. Yeah. There's a lot of people that don't like change because they think the game is flourishing as it is, and it is flourishing in its current form. What do you say to those people?
Well, I'll say this, that every major decision that has grown the game in the AFL has been poo-pooed by either the media and or talkback callers. I was in a board meeting for presidents in 2000 when Essendon and North Melbourne, two of the most progressive teams at that stage, said they'd sue the AFL if they kept them on Friday night football because the ratings were dropping down. And
really? We love playing Friday nights. You gave us the weekend off.
We did until those times, but I couldn't believe it. So then that all changed. But everything has been... The first Friday night game, people were losing their mind. Players were running around with black boot
North Melbourne, Collingwood, wasn't it?
You wouldn't be able to catch the yellow ball and, the dew, and it's going to affect the... People said it was going to affect the percentage. How does it affect the percentage? Yeah. But these are the things. Your point right at the start is right. People don't like change. It's 2 weeks. There's been 28 grand finals in October, and what it does is it makes cricket happy because they get the 150th, the sesquicentennial test. Rugby, the NRL comes to town, the gridiron. That is a major play for football going into America. Heard you were talking off there. This gives AFL a chance to maybe play games in Los Angeles.
Absolutely,
and do
it broadens the game.
We've got to get broader.
So put the number on it. Percentage-wise, this of happening next year. What do you think?
I mean, I think it should be 100%.
Right, but what?
Well, you've got to get through. As Tom said, you've got to get through, everyone on 3AW having a complaint, and Caro didn't have the story, so she'll want to knock it over. Usual,
Well, there we go.
Kane will complain.
I was waiting for that 4 weeks in.
But clubs need that spell more than ever. I think after the season finishes, they need that spell to Christmas to reset. After draft, I reckon they'll get a bit of time off, come back in January and launch from there.
As a player, did you want to train for 2 weeks, break for Christmas for 3 weeks, and come back and train?
No, not at all. And I trust players enough now to go away and over that Chrissy period, do the work to come back in January in good enough nick to launch.
It'll be intriguing to see if the AFLW starts in February as well. February, March start, June, July grand final. That would mean that the two competitions essentially line up, which will be less of a burden for the clubs.
That's exactly, I think, where it should go.
Yeah. And I think, to your players' point of view, players look at the NBA, they look at the All-Star game, and I think they're more inclined than they were 20, 30 years ago to be part of that me type All-Star game, which is the State of Origin.
And for the women to have an international match against the Irish would be absolutely fantastic.
That would be unreal. And that's what they're talking about at the moment. Ned Guy and Josh Marnie have been over in Ireland talking about an international rules game. When it is and which form it takes is still to be determined, but it's going ahead. Like, there's a lot of goodwill around this.
Yeah. All right. So it's lots to talk about. And as I said, don't lose your mind out there, ladies and gentlemen. If you don't like it, have a think about it. But we're coming up with answers to problems. You can't have the NFL playing on the same 2 days as two finals matches and maybe even risk losing a final at the MCG. No. Do this, everything works.
And if you don't like it, complaints at Channel 9 to Eddie McGuire.
Don't worry, I'll answer all of them too. I've got another bloke, an AI guy who can do it for me these days.